I think I'm still in a bit of shock and denial, frankly. And I was sitting in the makeup chair when I heard just somebody say, "Oh, Robert Redford died."
Hollywood legends are weeping. A nation is mourning because somewhere in the mountains of Utah, the most beautiful man who ever graced the silver screen.
Hollywood is in tears. An entire nation is mourning because high in the mountains of Utah, the most handsome man to ever light up the silver screen has taken his final bow. The legendary Robert Redford is gone at 89, and the tributes now pouring in are simply stunning. But no tribute is more heartbreakingly beautiful than what we're hearing from Meryl Streep, the woman who knew him better than almost anyone. So how did Robert Redford pass away? And what is Hollywood really saying about him? Join us as we reveal how Meryl Streep shocked the entire world with her powerful tribute, the life of a true legend whose death nearly broke the internet. Hollywood icon Robert Redford passed away at his Utah home at the age of 89. He was for decades one of the industry's most desired leading men. For over half a century, Robert Redford captivated us with some of Hollywood's most unforgettable characters. So let's take a brief look back at his incredible legendary life. He was born on August 18, 1936 in Santa Monica, California, to his father Charles Robert Redford, an accountant for Standard Oil, and his mother Martha. Charles Robert Redford Jr. was a seriously scrappy kid. We're talking stealing hubcaps in high school, and even losing his college baseball scholarship at the University of Colorado because of his drinking. However, even as a high school student, he showed a real aptitude for caricature, and this talent contributed to his major decision to seriously study art. Redford then enjoyed a year-long adventure travelling all across Europe, hitchhiking, staying in youth hostels, and truly living the romantic life of a young painter. But eventually he came to a harsh realization that his artwork was unoriginal and, frankly, just not very good. For that very reason, he returned to New York City to study theatrical design at the Pratt Institute of Art. He then enrolled in acting classes at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. By the end of 1960, he was on Broadway in multiple plays, most notably Barefoot in the Park, the very show that launched him into superstardom. His TV and stage work, along with those classic all-American good looks, quickly led to movies and his breakout role in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The actor was 33 at the time. Then The Way We Were and The Sting, both released in 1973, made Redford the #1 box office star for the next 3 years. He used his immense influence to champion environmental causes and spent his fortune on Utah property, which he then turned into a ranch and the famous Sundance ski resort. Wanting to try something completely new, Redford stepped behind the camera and immediately won an Oscar for Ordinary People, his directorial debut. And truly, the man's legacy would reach far beyond Hollywood. In 1980, he established the Sundance Institute for aspiring filmmakers. Its yearly film festival has now become one of the world's most influential. He waited 8 full years before getting behind the camera again, this time for the screen version of John Nichols's acclaimed novel of the Southwest, The Milagro Beanfield War. He scored huge with critics and fans in 1992 with the Brad Pitt film A River Runs Through It, and again in 1994 with Quiz Show earning him another Best Director nomination. It's really no overstatement to say Robert spent his entire life giving us all something to remember. So let's talk about what made Robert Redford truly special. The Sundance legacy. Of course he was gorgeous. Yes, he was incredibly talented. But what really set him apart was his powerful vision for independent film. As we mentioned, Redford founded the Sundance Institute in 1980, right after his Oscar win for directing Ordinary People. The festival became a massive launchpad for previously unknown filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, Paul Thomas Anderson, and Darren Aronofsky. Seriously, let that sink in for a moment. Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, Paul Thomas Anderson. These are the directors who literally shaped modern cinema, and they all got their start because Robert Redford believed in independent voices. In a 2018 interview with the Associated Press, he famously said that for him, the single word to be underscored has always been independence. I've always believed in that word. But then comes the pushback. It's stupid and dangerous. So what are you telling me to do? Sit by and just shut up because it's dangerous. I am here to tell you that is a complete waste. That is what ultimately led me to want to create a special category that supported independent artists who weren't getting a chance to be heard. The industry was controlled by the mainstream, which I was part of. But I saw all these other stories out there that just weren't having a chance to be told, and I thought, well, maybe I can commit my energy to giving those people a real chance. As I look back on it now, I feel very good about that. And that's the Robert Redford so many ladies had huge crushes on. Not just the beautiful man, but the man with vision, with principles, with the incredible courage to use his fame for something much bigger than himself. By 2025, the Sundance Festival had grown so prominent that organisers decided they'd outgrown Park City, and they approved a massive relocation to Boulder, Colorado. Redford released a statement that said, "Change is inevitable. We must always evolve and we must always grow, which has been the very core of our survival." Even at 89, even as he was preparing for his own final chapter, Robert Redford was still thinking about evolution, still thinking about constant growth. That was the man everyone came to know. Always moving forward, always looking for that next great challenge. Redford acted well into his later years, reuniting with Jane Fonda in the 2017 Netflix film Our Souls at Night. The following year he starred in The Old Man and The Gun. At age 82 he said it was his last film, but he wasn't really retiring. "To me, retirement means quitting," he told CBS Sunday Morning in 2018. "There's this life to lead, so why not live it as much as you can for as long as you can?" That philosophy guided every single thing he did. That is what made his friendships with his colleagues so enduring. They all understood that art, that connection, and the work you create together will outlast everything else. Speaking of things that endure, Redford knew that lesson well. His personal life is probably not what you'd expect. His personal life and the losses he faced. In many respects, Redford had a fairly typical childhood growing up in California during the 1940s and 1950s. He played multiple sports, including tennis, football, and track, but he especially excelled at baseball. Beyond athletics, he loved reading Greek mythology and the Sunday comics, yet some of his struggles were unique. He overcame a mild case of polio at age 11, and not long after his twin sisters passed away shortly after birth. Redford later said his family navigated those deaths the same way they handled any challenge, by not talking about it. Speaking to NPR's Fresh Air back in 2018, he said, "You don't ask for anything. You just bear the brunt of what comes and do it with grace." So when his own mum went through tragedy, no one spoke about it. Everyone just moved on. Coming back to America after a year and a half away, Redford started a family with his first wife, Lola Van Wagenen, whom he married in 1958. The happy couple was thrilled to welcome their son Scott in September of the next year. But tragedy struck. The baby died from sudden infant death syndrome just months later. As Redford put it, they were just starting their lives. He was launching his career in New York. Of course it was traumatic. He had no idea how that would play out over time. They just had to deal with it. Robert Redford captivated audiences both on and off screen with powerful movies that often explored deep themes. You have to move on, but he later admitted how traumatic it is when it happens, especially when you're so young and you're just not equipped to handle it. Redford, just 21 years old at the time, threw himself into his newfound passion for acting. In the meantime, he and his wife had 3 more children, Shauna, Jaime, and Amy, between 1960 and 1970. In 1983, his daughter Shauna's boyfriend Sid Wells died from a gunshot wound in an apparent attack. At the time, Redford was filming the baseball movie The Natural with Robert Duvall and Glenn Close. According to The Mirror, he actually halted production to attend Sid's funeral. Meanwhile, his son Jaime was diagnosed with a serious liver disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis. In 1993, he needed 2 liver transplants. The second was because the first replacement had a faulty valve, reported the Salt Lake Tribune. To help boost his son's morale during this terrible ordeal, Redford offered Jaime a job as a screenwriter. Jaime later explained that his father knew he had hit rock bottom, that he had few people to lean on, so he gave him this incredible gesture of hope, a reason to hang on. He recovered from the transplant and worked with his father for many years before tragically dying from bile duct cancer in October of 2020. For the Hollywood icon, Jaime's death was yet another heartbreaking loss to endure mostly in private. He was quoted saying he always kept his private life separate so he could actually have one. He believed he didn't owe the public his private life. A performance, sure, but his actual life, no. But when you consider the sheer amount of emotion Redford conveyed on screen, often without saying a word, you can't help but think his own personal tragedies fueled those legendary performances. Despite all the losses, Robert Redford lived a relatively long life. But even though we knew he had to go someday, his passing still felt sudden and unexpected. Death and tributes. September 16th, 2025 was a truly sad day. It was the day Hollywood lost one of its biggest icons. Robert Redford passed away peacefully at his Sundance home in the mountains of Utah. Surrounded by his loved ones, the icon known for so many classic films was gone, and Hollywood is still reeling from the devastating loss. When the news of Redford's death finally hit the internet, the wave of sadness was immediate. But what's truly making people emotional isn't just his passing, or even the sheer volume of tributes flooding in from all over Hollywood. It's the tributes themselves. They are simply stunning, with each one feeling more heartbreaking than the last. Barbra Streisand called him charismatic, intelligent, intense, always interesting, and simply one of the finest actors ever. Jane Fonda, who shared the silver screen with Robert Redford on a number of memorable occasions, also shared her thoughts. She described Redford as simply a beautiful person in every way. She explained that the news hit her so hard when she read Robert had passed away that she couldn't stop crying. According to Fonda, he meant so much and was a beautiful person through and through. He truly stood for an America that they would have to keep fighting for. The two developed a lasting friendship after co-starring in films together, including Redford's big-screen debut in 1960's Tall Story. Fonda has even admitted she fell in love with him every time they worked together. American filmmaker James Gunn also shared a tribute to Redford on his Instagram after he passed. The Superman director wrote that he grew up watching Redford's movies, admiring his quiet, unforced performances and his constant grace. He was the movie star. He'll be greatly missed. Gunn also shared his top 10 Redford movies, not counting The Sting or Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, which included The Candidate Barefoot in the Park and The Natural. Antonio Banderas, in a tribute he posted on X called Redford, a true icon of cinema in every possible sense. He said Redford's talent will continue to move him forever, shining bright through film frames and in his own memory. Even the world of politics is reacting. President Donald Trump heard of Redford's death while speaking to reporters before a UK visit, saying Robert Redford had a stretch of years where nobody was better. Even in our divided political climate, Redford's immense talent transcended it all. Utah Governor Spencer Cox wrote, "Decades ago, Robert Redford came to Utah and fell in love with the state. He cherished our landscapes, building a legacy that turned Utah into a home for both storytelling and great creativity." Through Sundance and his devotion to conservation, he shared Utah with the entire world. Today we honor his life, his incredible vision, and his lasting contribution to our state. His legacy definitely lives on, but it was Meryl Streep's tribute to her Out of Africa co-star that really got people talking. She said, "One of the lions has passed. Rest in peace, my lovely friend." When Meryl Streep calls you one of the lions, you know you have truly made an impact. And the way she honored him over the years clearly shows a love and respect that goes far beyond typical Hollywood friendships. What's most striking in all these tributes isn't his looks or his fame, but his impact on the world and the lives he touched along the way. He touched so many people's lives in so many different ways. The careers he launched, the powerful stories he helped tell, that's what being a real star is all about. Using your platform to lift others up, Meryl Streep saw that in him immediately. She saw past the golden hair and perfect jaw to the man who wanted to make meaningful films, champion independent voices, and use his success to create opportunities for so many others. Their on-screen romance, directed by Sydney Pollack, became one of the most iconic moments in Robert Redford's entire career. Pollack, whose parents were Jewish immigrants, directed Redford in 7 of his 21 films. That choice of collaborator really speaks to his values. He worked with Sydney Pollack 7 times because he trusted him, because they shared a singular vision, and that's what truly made Robert Redford so stunning. It wasn't just his looks, but his loyalty, his principles, and that fierce commitment to excellence. This is exactly what made Meryl Streep's tributes to him so powerful over the years. She recognized all of that depth in him. And if you're wondering why Meryl Streep cared so deeply, just take a look at their on-screen relationship. That incredible unspoken chemistry. Now that the icon is gone, it appears the Oscar winner will get a funeral that is very un-Hollywood. The star left specific instructions for a simple family-only service, and his representative confirmed that it will be a quiet affair. No red carpets, no flashing cameras, and no Hollywood circus. The family has simply requested their privacy. Redford's wife, Sibylle, his daughters, Shauna and Amy, and 7 grandchildren, will gather in the Utah mountains for a low-key service to bid farewell to their beloved father and grandfather. This news comes just after Paul Newman's family paid their own moving tribute to Redford following his passing. Regarding the funeral, while the family wants privacy, we all know the public memorial will be extraordinary when it's announced. I mean, why not? This was a man who touched every corner of the entertainment business. The actors he elevated, the directors. He discovered the vital causes he championed. Everyone is going to want to say goodbye. And naturally, Meryl Streep will be there. How could she not be? She was the woman who starred beside him in Out of Africa, the one who saw his depth when others only saw his beauty, who kept a friendship with him for over 40 years. She'll be there to honour the man who helped create one of cinema's greatest love stories. So let's rewind the clock to 1985. The relationship between Robert Redford and Meryl Streep is still remembered as one of the most striking and natural pairings in movie history. Their collaboration truly hit its peak in Out of Africa. That was Sydney Pollack's sweeping romantic drama. There's a writer, James Hillman, who talks about something called the acorn, the thing you were always meant to do or to be. You had Redford already, a Hollywood icon, and Streep, who was at the absolute peak of her artistic powers, bringing together 2 very different energies that blended perfectly on screen. Redford naturally brought his signature charisma, his quiet strength, and that legendary intensity. He had that rare ability to say so much with just a look, a pause, or even the smallest gesture. Streep, on the other hand, was deliberate, deeply emotive, and layered in her performance, diving completely into the psychology of her characters. But instead of clashing these contrasting styles, created a magnetic balance that truly captivated audiences. Their chemistry wasn't loud or exaggerated, but subtle and so believable, which made their on-screen connection even more compelling. During a question and answer session, Meryl Streep once reflected on that famous scene with Robert Redford where he intimately washes her hair in the film Out of Africa. In that epic romantic drama, Streep played a Danish baroness who falls in love with a big game hunter played by Redford while she's running a coffee plantation in colonial South Africa. I was just kind of wondering why your name and phone number were in the address books of 2 of the men who were arrested at Watergate. The movie's most iconic moment shows Redford tenderly washing Streep's hair by a river, all while reciting lines from the English poem The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Unfortunately, Redford was not exactly a natural hairstylist during that shampoo scene, according to Streep. So she had her longtime hair and makeup artist Roy Helen Take Redford aside to give him a few professional pointers, she explained. And somehow it worked. Redford took the lesson to heart and just really got into it. He was fantastic. By take 5, Streep said that in her own words, she was so in love. Off-screen, their professional respect for each other was just as powerful. Redford admired Streep's absolute commitment to her craft, while Streep often talked about Redford's ability to bring a natural ease to a performance without overcomplicating it. This mutual respect translated directly into the pure honesty of their on-screen relationship. Their pairing is still held up as the prime example of how two powerhouse actors can elevate a love story into something absolutely timeless. Unlike that fleeting Hollywood chemistry that relies only on physical attraction, Redford and Streep brought depth, restraint, and a shared seriousness that made their work resonate for decades. So after all this, what did this legend really leave behind? A true legacy. The entertainment industry is mourning today, and the reactions are pouring in from every single corner of the business. Coleman Domingo posted with love and admiration saying, "Thank you, Mr. Redford," adding that his everlasting impact will be felt for generations. Ron Howard wrote, "Rest in peace," calling him a tremendously influential cultural figure for all the creative choices he made as an actor. A producer and director, and for launching the Sundance Film Festival, which supercharged America's independent film movement, a true artistic game-changer. Kenneth Cole was stunned by the loss of Robert Redford, a colleague, a visionary friend and an idol. He was a legendary artist who created Sundance, a place where countless artists found their voices and audiences found their stories. His legacy, Cole said, has inspired so many for decades and will live on. In his 1970s heyday, few actors could match Redford's star power, aided considerably by his blonde hair, his granite jaw, and that million-dollar smile. With his environmental work, his anti-establishment view of filmmaking, and his groundbreaking efforts to support indie filmmakers, Redford used his fame to push back against the system while advancing his own creative vision. Much like Gary Cooper or Gregory Peck, and Steve McQueen, Robert Redford wasn't known for having a particularly wide range as an actor, but as a movie star in his prime, few could touch him. That's what Barbra Streisand saw, not just the surface beauty, but the incredible depth underneath. This was a man who could easily hold his own opposite the great Paul Newman, who could carry a film like All the President's Men, and who could step behind the camera to direct Oscar-winning films like Ordinary People. Redford starred in 16 features between 1969 and 1980, many of them huge hits that traded on his amazing screen presence. Films like Downhill Racer, The Hot Rock, Jeremiah Johnson, and The Candidate. Think of The Way We Were with Barbra Streisand, The Great Gatsby with Mia Farrow, The Great Waldo Pepper, 3 Days of the Condor with Faye Dunaway, and The Electric Horseman with Jane Fonda and Brubaker. But that's not the Robert Redford most people ever saw. The truly playful one, the guy who loved a good joke, who just soaked up the energy and spirit of the people around him. Streisand brought that side out of him, and in return he revealed her more vulnerable side. Their on-screen chemistry was electric because it was founded on real respect and genuine affection. In Hollywood, that kind of bond is rarer than you'd believe. So many partnerships are just about ego, about whose name is first, and who gets to shine the brightest. Redford leaves behind his wife Sibylle Sagars Redford and his 2 children, Shauna Redford Schlosser and Amy Redford. 2 of his last directing efforts included Lions for Lambs, which explored American complicity in Afghanistan, and The Conspirator, which took a hard look at the show trial that followed Abraham Lincoln's assassination, continuing his love for political drama. Even in his final movies, he was still posing tough questions and pushing every boundary. He gave an incredible primal and almost completely silent performance in J.C. Chandor's film All Is Lost, playing a man stranded all alone at sea. An Oscar nomination somehow passed him by for that role, but the film feels incredibly prophetic now. It truly did. He then said he had to wait for 2 years before he could get the money to build his own house, which is exactly what he did. A lone man confronting the vast, unknown ocean, having to rely only on his own strength and will to survive. Throughout his career, Redford was often called a sex symbol, especially in the 1970s. BBC News famously described his appeal as all-American good looks that you just couldn't ignore. The Associated Press pointed out that Redford's iconic wavy blonde hair and his boyish grin made him the most sought-after leading man during the peak of his fame. But Redford himself hated being labelled a sex symbol. In an interview for the New York Times, Redford fired back at this image, saying he never once thought of himself as some glamorous guy or a handsome guy or any of that stuff. All of a sudden there's this image. He felt that glamour image can be a serious handicap. After Redford's passing, an obituary in Variety celebrated him as the godfather of independent film, thanks to his founding of the Sundance Film Institute. It said that as a movie star, few could ever touch him. Writing for The Guardian, Andrew Pulver called Redford a true giant of American cinema and one of the defining movie stars of the 1970s, who moved effortlessly between the Hollywood new wave and mainstream blockbusters. The Los Angeles Times simply remembered Redford as a generational icon. Over in France, culture minister Rachida Dati hailed him as a giant of American cinema. And as the founder of the Sundance Film Festival, he's been called the godfather of independent film. The New York Times pointed out that Redford's movies were known for tackling serious topics like corruption and grief, but they resonated with audiences because he wanted his films to have real cultural significance. And he always took risks by exploring dark and difficult material. He was called one of the few truly iconic screen figures of the last half-century, and praised as Hollywood's golden boy by The Hollywood Reporter. There's a book by James Hillman called The Soul's Code, and he talks about this concept called the acorn, which is the thing you were truly meant to do or become. Filmmaker Ron Howard praised Redford and his legacy, calling him a hugely influential cultural figure and a true artistic game-changer. His creation of the Sundance Film Festival is credited with creating a massive boost for independent filmmaking. After he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016, the Salt Lake Tribune said Sundance was a catalyst for an indie film explosion. Time magazine noted Redford's environmental activism, calling him fiercely dedicated to fighting for a world that was livable for everyone, and mentioning that the Redford Foundation supported environmentally friendly movie productions. His environmental work led Fox News to remember Redford as a Hollywood legend who dedicated himself to being a great steward of the environmental movement and a real champion of the American Southwest. In 2016, then-President Barack Obama called Redford one of the foremost conservationists of our generation. So, as the world waits for news about his memorial services, and as Hollywood begins to process the loss of this incredible man, it's clear Robert Redford's real legacy was the feeling he inspired, the dreams he championed, and the independent voices he lifted up through Sundance. He showed everyone that beauty combined with substance is what's truly powerful. That stardom with a real purpose can actually change the world. And through it all, Meryl Streep was there, seeing his worth, celebrating his immense talent, and keeping their friendship alive for decade after decade. Her tributes to him weren't just powerful because of her words. They were stunning because of the deep love and respect they clearly represented. Will Hollywood honour the family's request for privacy at the funeral? Let us know what you think down in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more. And be sure to click the next video on your screen. You're going to love it.